Whenever we talk about Hindu mythology, some right wingers jump in and say, hey, it's not mythology, it is history. Is it? Or is it mythology? What's the difference between mythology and history? And where do epics and legends lie? Hello everyone, this is Pranav and you're watching Prav. We have now a channel where I talk about history, mythology, fiction, and that is what I'm going to do right now. So when people say, oh, Hindu mythology is not mythology, it's history because it's our history. Hold your gun. History is something which is documented, which has corroborative evidences. You can study through archaeology, literary sources, oral sources, and you can match this up and then say, okay, this is historic. And history usually have a logic, and it's very, very objective. You can have subjective opinions, interpretation of it, but the event is very objective. While in mythology, they are just stories. They can be literal, they can be allegorical. There are many variations, inconsistencies, and mythologies contradict itself. Like, for example, Vishnu's 10 avatar. The first is Matsya, second is Kurma, third is Varaha, and fourth is Narsimha, fifth is Vamana. Now if we consider these avatars in a chronological order, here's the problem we face. In the Samudra Manthan, we get to see Vishnu's second avatar, that is Kurma, the tortoise. Here, Indra is having Samudra Manthan with Asura king Bali. This Bali is the same Bali who is grandson of Prahlad.
Now Prahlad is just a kid during Vishnu's fourth avatar Narsimha, while his grandson is already an adult in Vishnu's second avatar.
So here we find chronological order which are very inconsistent with itself. Second, an important part of mythology not being history is that they have very supernatural element to it. You cannot prove supernatural to be real. And third, and one of the most important part which can counter any right winger is, see, there are so many variations of a mythology. Suppose you consider one version of it to be true. So now you consider one version of it as truth, one version which is historic. That automatically makes every other version mythological. This itself explains that it is mythology and not history. And if it is history, it has to have some sort of archaeological and other backing. Now, where do epics and legends lie? Now, epics and legends are something like Ramayana and Mahabharata in Indian context, which are considered as itihasa, in a sense historic, while in Western terms, you have Iliad, Odyssey, Aeneid, Epic of Gilgamesh. Now, these epics have people, characters who are humans, but there are also characters who are gods. There are some humanly possible events happening over there, but there are also some supernatural element to it. Now, if you exclude supernatural element, some of it could be true. So epics lie somewhere between history and mythology, where some part of it could be mythical and some part of it could be real.
So in Mahabharata, we see Janmeja, the grandson of Arjuna, exterminating Nagas. So now Nagas are serpent people according to the myth, but as we know, it is humanly impossible. So historically, there could have been a tribe of forest people worshipping snakes who were driven out of Hastinapur, which also corroborates with this evidence that there was a Naga dynasty living in central India which later on became the Gonds and also had marital relations with the Guptas and Vakadakas. So they were humans, they were not snake people, they were probably humans. Here, history and mythology diverge.
So we have found archaeological sites like Troy, Hastinapur, and other towns and cities. So we know these places existed, but we don't know whether all these stories around these places are true or not. Yes, we can find some graves and something, and then we can try to understand if it was really true. But unlike history, which is purely documented, mythology can never be confirmed. Of course, it can be confirmed only if specifics are proved to be true. For example, Hastinapur was destroyed by flood according to Matsya Purana. And actually they have found a flood layer at the archaeological site of Hastinapur, which itself proves that yeah, possible, some of it is true. But then again, you cannot say, okay, just because the flood was true, the whole war of Hastinapur, the whole war of Kurukshetra, the whole war of Pandavas and Kauravas are true. You can still consider it to be historic because with an argument that yeah, in a sense, if it was historic, that's why it was engraved in these myths. Like mythology may have some inspiration from history, and that is true, but you can't pinpoint which part of it is true or not. It is all depending on interpretations. Now you will say, oh, so that can be true even for historical events. That yes, some historical events are true and some variations are myths in a sense. For example, Aryan invasion. It is called myth because there is nothing to prove. There is no archaeological data which says that the invasion happened. Yes, some genetic evidences show that there is some flow of people from Central Asia to India, but there are no archaeological evidence of an invasion. And this is why it is called a myth. And that's why Aryan invasion theory is replaced by Aryan migration theory. To oversimplify it, history is story of humans, mythology is story of gods, and epics and legends lie somewhere in between where story of humans blend with story of gods. This is Pranav signing off. Tada!